Do you love the idea of personal growth but find the practice of it exhausting?
We get it.
We're Brandon and Megan Giggling, growth coaches with the mission to put the personal back in personal growth.
If you want a new way of growing into the next version of you without the frustration, guilt, and overwhelm, you're in the right place.
It's time to rethink your growth journey and make it into something that works for you.
You in?
Welcome to Growth Reframed. Do you love...
Wow, no, we don't need two intros. Hey, y'all, welcome back to another episode of Growth Reframed. Apparently, we're trying to intro you in twice, but that's fine. We are so pumped that you're here, and really thank you for listening. Super thankful for your support, and can't wait to get into it today. I'm going to say a really shocking statement, and it's really going to shock you, Meg. It's going to shock you listeners out there, but I'm just going to say it, okay?
Let's go. Ready for this.
The world, it's a negative freaking place. Shocking, I know.
This is news.
Oh my gosh, this is brand new. This is unique to what I'm saying on this podcast today. But the world is a very, very negative place. But really, I mean, you turn on the news, you turn on just people you interact with in the world. I mean, in the last few years, it seems even worse since like all the pandemic and all the COVID stuff. It does actually seem worse, that there's a lot more negativity. Obviously, a lot of the things that you interact with and see and are put in front of you are negative. And so today we want to talk about, how do you live in a world that's so dang negative all the time?
Okay, I have to ask, when you put on the positive vibes shirt, for those of you who are just listening and you're not watching on YouTube, Brandon has a positive vibes shirt on. Was this intentional? Did you know? Did you plan it?
I'd love to say it was like it just happened, but yes, I planned it. I knew we were going to be talking about negativity, trying to spread some positive vibes. So
okay, yeah, got it. Okay, yeah. I mean, honestly, I know I'm probably more negative than I should be, and even though I want to be positive, I believe in the power of positivity. Like, I want to do the right thing. I do still sometimes worry that like I am a part of the problem, more of the solution. And I don't want to be that, but I just, have those feelings sometimes like, am I too negative? Or like you hear about people being like, oh, she is so negative all the time. Or he is just, oh my gosh, he never has anything good to say. It's always just, he's such a victim. Like people will say this kind of stuff and it's like, oh my gosh, do I do any of that? And I'd like to believe that I don't, but maybe I do it too much. Maybe I am too negative too much. But today we're going to talk about just kind of combating all those negative feelings out there, all the negative news, all the negative topics that we all have to keep going down the road of a million times over, and just hopefully getting the message of positive vibes, like your shirt says, out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I even want to say it right off the bat, because you've mentioned the positive vibes shirt. Obviously, I'm rocking it. But when I put this on, I put it on with the thought that I did want to talk about the fact that I'm not saying to be like toxically positive, because that's like one of the personal growth things I hate. Like, it's the toxic positivity. Like, just fake it till you make it, keep doing it, keep being positive. Obviously, there's really bad stuff that happens every day, and there's not always a chance to be positive. But what we're really talking about today is how you show up and how you perceive and how you interact when those things happen to you, or when you hear that news story, or when people around you are talking. Like, you can show up and you have control of how you show up in every single place that you show up. And what normally happens is, you talked about having conversations with other people, whatever, and you're like, am I part of the problem or the solution? Which we'll get into that. But I think if people are staying around talking about negative things, it's really easy to get pulled in.
Oh, yes, 100%.
And obviously with the things that we interact with and the things that we can all agree, I mean, like I said off the top, the world's a negative place. So if you're constantly inundated with that, I think we can all agree with the fact that that is going to have an impact on you and how you move forward. The question really is it going to move through you, or is it going to be held in you and then pushed back out to everyone else? I think the important thing is to understand that it can actually move through you, and you ultimately are in control of how you show up. But the first thing off the top, because I've always been guilty of this, I still am to this day, is watching your media consumption. So like, we know the news, we know social media, we know a lot of places, it's a lot of negativity, and it can instill, even if it's not a negative story, it can still instill a lot of negativity in us by the comparison game or whatever else. So really being mindful of your media consumption. And
Right.
And I say that for me because I'm like the number one. I have that problem, and we can get into why. But go ahead.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just thinking like, yeah, it's both like your news media, like the negative stuff that you hear on the news, and also I'm glad you pointed out like it's also like the social media, because even if it's happy news for somebody else and they're sharing it over on, their Instagram feed or whatever, you might have some negative feelings that come out of their happy news, which is, just kind of the human condition, right? Like we don't want to feel upset that somebody else got a promotion or is going on a really cool vacation, but sometimes those thoughts can creep in. And so it's really important to keep those in check. If Instagram or Facebook or the news are problems for you, then it might be time to take a break from it. Mm-hmm. If you notice that you're triggered easily by that, I mean, I'm definitely triggered by the news. I don't want to see it. Mostly to Brandon's complete dismay. I have no idea at any given moment what's happening, and he is my news source because I can filter it through him and I don't have to hear necessarily all of the bad and still get like the highlights of the news. But I think he would prefer that I'm a little more knowledgeable than I am. But for me, it's just like I don't want to be sad.
Yeah. Well, it's just like the negativity and like the anxiety and like the worry and fear stories are what sells.
Right.
Like that sells. That's what gets people watching. That's what gets the ratings up. So that's what people present. But then how you just really being aware that you have control of what you're actually taking in. And like what I was talking about before, I feel, and I've often fought this, I've gotten a lot better, but I feel like it's my civic duty to know what's going on and what's happening in the world. And there's some truth to that. But in today's day and age, I often talk to other people and I say, like in today's day and age, there's so much media and so much connectivity amongst everyone. If something big enough happened, you're going to know. Like you're going to know. If it's something that comes up, you're going to know. And by the way, I know there'll be haters that say, well, you're just putting your head in the sand, whatever. No, what I'm doing is I'm protecting myself and my own self-care by understanding how when I interact with those things, it doesn't do well for me.
It's almost like you have to have a filter, like a filter of what you're even going to consume. But once you consume it, like how you're going to filter that out or what you're going to keep in, like what you're going to hold on to and what you're going to let roll off your back.
Right. And I think it's about diversifying what you're actually taking in. Like there are news stations that I watch and I try to watch a little from, no matter what side of it on, you try to take it all in. I'm not like exclusively looking at one thing or the other. But then when you looking at social media, when you look at how, first of all, asking the question, is it affecting me negatively? Cool. If it is, then what could you do to diversify and mix it up and add new things? Like, are you actively searching, because you have to in this day and age, actively searching for positive news? And there are whole places where you can find positive news and positive stories, believe it or not. There are whole sites dedicated to it. Are there ways you can do that to kind of mix it up so you're not constantly putting things in front of you? And then this might be a really hot take for some of you, and you might not love it, but this is what I do. If there's people on social media, if there's people that incite things in me that I don't like, I just unfollow them. It's not about like, if I don't agree with you, I unfollow you. No, what I'm saying is I'm clearly identifying people that they're making me show up in a way that I don't want to, just based on seeing them and what they're making, how they're making me feel about myself. It might even be positive things they're sharing, but if they're making me personally feel bad or uncomfortable, or like I don't feel a certain good vibe from it, some of those people I unfollow. It doesn't mean I have any ill will toward them. It's just they don't serve me. Like what they're putting out doesn't help me. It doesn't serve me, and that's fine. We're not for everyone, and they're not for everyone. So it's okay to do that. But I think a lot of times we don't do that. We just get super vocal about disagreeing and arguing because we're in an environment that's always negative. So we think that that's what you have to do.
Absolutely. And a big thing for me that has helped when I feel like I'm stuck in that negative cycle is just flipping the switch entirely and focusing instead on positivity and gratitude. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things I can't control. Yeah, the media and social media are out there. But what do I have right now to look at in my own personal life that I can be thankful for, that I can choose to be grateful for, that I can choose to focus on? Because If I'm choosing to focus on those positive things and I'm sort of filtering out more of the negative things, then what you focus on expands, and therefore my brain is going to be filled with a lot more of those happy feelings and a lot less of the negative, icky feelings that you can get so easily in today's world.
Right. And it's not about ignoring that those negative things are happening. It's not even about pretending they don't exist. It's just about understanding that 99% of the time you're faced with negativity. So trying to just inject some positivity and gratitude, because like you said, you constantly focus and have it in front of you that things are negative. And if that's where you're focusing, when things are positive, you can't even appreciate or accept that they're positive because you're so stuck in that negative mindset. And so it's not about ignoring. It's not about saying there aren't problems with the world. Of course there are, but it's about where you're going to focus your attention and energy and how you're going to combat that. Because the fact is, we live in the world. It's not necessarily going to change. Like, no, not everyone's going to change, but you can change, and you can change how you show up. One of the things we've done in our life recently in the last year or two is we've tried to cultivate good friendships and good relationships with people. And we've been really intentional about that. That was something in our lives that was really lacking. Like, we didn't have friends. We weren't in high school or college anymore. It was really difficult to meet people. And so we intentionally went out and built relationships, positive relationships with other people who lift us up. They don't tear us down. Like, the personality types, the people that we're interacting with, they're not negative people. We didn't go out and make friends with an outwardly negative people. Like, we intentionally made strong relationships with people that we respect and admire how they show up in the world. And that took effort and that took work. But rather than just sitting there and focusing on the lack and saying, well, everyone's negative, and so why even try to, even try to plant a seed to try to get a real relationship? We just can't do it. And so we're just going to sit in our house and be negative all the time. But surrounding yourself with other positive people, or mostly positive, I mean, no one can be positive all the time, but mostly positive people, has made a big impact in our life.
Right. And on the flip side of that, intentionally distancing yourself a little bit from people who do come out of the woodworks with all their negativity. You guys know, you're thinking of somebody right now as I'm speaking about how that person is. And you know that there's the person in your life that every time you talk to them, it's draining because all they have is 5,000 negative things to report. All the bad news, all the victimhood they've experienced. And it doesn't mean, by the way, that they don't have a tough life. It doesn't mean that they're not experiencing things that are hard. I'm not saying you can't complain to your BFFs. What I am saying is that there are people who tend to have a negative reaction and a negative experience for everything they do, and everything in their life is a problem. And those types of people are probably worth some distance. It's probably better for you to intentionally take yourself out of their lives just a little bit, at least at first, to kind of give yourself some space to breathe from that toxic feeling, that horrible feeling that you get every single time you're talking to them. Your friends are supposed to be there for a mutual relationship. They're not supposed to take from you and make you listen to them and listen to them and listen to them and never give anything back. Like, it's a two-way street. So if you have those people in your life that are constantly taking and never actually giving, that's a big sign that maybe they're a little bit too negative for what you need right now, and maybe you need to step back.
Yeah, I meyou can, and you're allowed to, by the way. Not everyone is meant to be in our lives for all time. Like I always talk about, you find your people who you want to interact with, but understand that you have some responsibility in that. And yeah, it might take you deciding to distance yourself, or just deciding before you distance yourself to have a real conversation with that person about kind of your intentions for the relationship and what you would like the relationship to be. You're allowed to do that. You don't have to just accept. I posted a video just last week about, you don't have to accept that, oh, well, that's just how that person is. That's how they'll always be. Well, cool. Then you're not going to be in my life. It sounds cold, but they have no problem doing that to you. They have no problem bringing the negativity into you and thinking that that should be your focus. So you can literally distance yourself and remove them from your life completely. You're allowed to do that. You don't have to keep someone there because they've always been there. And that's a form, by the way, of practicing self-care, of understanding how you're showing up, what you need, and being real intentional with those needs, and understanding that a lot of times what you need ends up being more important than all those other influences that are trying to spew negativity into your life.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed about myself that when I'm experiencing like anxiety or, blues or even sometimes depression, if it gets to that level, then what has happened is the negative is just kind of taking over, and I'm not necessarily focusing on my self-care. I'm not doing the things that I know are better for me, that make me feel good, that make me uplifted, that, help me bring the focus back to what's important, instead of like always going off on, my brain will just like keep going down the rabbit hole basically of all the negative things, and instead trying to rein that in through taking better care of myself. And sometimes when you're taking care of yourself, the other stuff just follows. When you start taking care of yourself, when you take a walk to clear your head, like you are able to actually feel in real time that your negative energy is walking off with you, and you're like pushing the positive back in. It's kind of like why I love running, because you can actually run off your bad feelings and come back feeling like, oh, a weight's been lifted from me. But as you experience those self-care things, and it doesn't have to be exercise, by the way, it's just, that's what I went to. But as you're experiencing those self-care things, you just like feel better, and it makes your mind more open to be able to accept the positive. Like you have more room to let that stuff in and push back the other stuff, like get the crap out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think one of the most important things we could say is, you already talked about like how you can show up and what you can do, but then what can you do to change, to be the change that you want to see in the world? It's really easy to get worn down and say, well, there's no fixing it. You can't really fix other people. You can't fix the world. No, but you can fix, your 3-foot world, like who you're in contact with, who you interact with. You like that SEAL team reference?
I do.
Your 3-foot world. But it's like you can have an effect and a ripple effect with the world around you by how you show up. If I show up and have positivity and positive energy, and there's negativity around me, but I show up with positivity because that's how I'm feeling, not fake, but that's how I'm feeling, it will have a ripple effect with the people around me. Not with everyone. Not with everyone I encounter. It doesn't mean there won't be negativity in the world. It doesn't mean that's going to fix everything. But it means, rather than throwing your hands up and saying, this world's such a freaking negative place, just forget it. And then just adding fuel to the negativity fire. Rather than doing that, think about how I can be the change today. And you can wake up every day with that idea. It doesn't mean it'll always go perfect, and it doesn't mean it'll always go well. But how can you intentionally show up and try to be more positive in a certain situation?
Right. I mean, lead by example. Like, show up in the way that you want people to show up around you. Walk away from conversations that just won't end because everybody's in a vicious like gossip and negativity cycle. Walk away. Like, physically walk away. Sometimes you have to, just to protect your own self. And that's okay. Just show up in the way that you need to show up for yourself. And hopefully others will catch on and see that, the way you have intentionally gone about this is actually making an impact in your life. And maybe they'll see that they want that impact in their own. If I'm consistently showing up positively, how you say it? I don't know.
Positively?
Yeah, I was like, why am I saying it weird? It's like my brain won't work. If you're consistently showing up and you have this positive energy about you, then people are just going to like gravitate towards that, and they're going to want what you have, and they're going to start to emulate that. Not everybody, of course, like you were just saying, but I mean, it's a possibility that you could actually, in your small world and the people right around you, have a greater impact on just what you do every day, your own family, your own friends, your own coworkers. And that's a big impact. It might seem like it's, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 people, but what if those people go out and do the same thing? You might slowly actually make a change and actually help people feel more positive about themselves, about their lives, and about their circumstances.
Yeah, when you were talking about that, I'm just thinking of like, I don't know why, but like the analogy of like a lighthouse came in my mind. Like you're in a ship and it's all dark everywhere. And it's like the world, it's all dark with negativity. But that lighthouse is like a beacon of hope to the ships out in the water. And you can be a beacon of light to the world. You can spread your light and spread your positivity and have an impact and have a ripple effect to which you might not even ever understand or see. Mm-hmm. But you're just putting that positivity out there rather than like, you can't, the mistake we make in this world, I'm sorry, I'm going to rant for a minute, is you try to fight negativity with more negativity. You can't fight negativity with more negativity, because guess what? Negativity plus negativity equals negativity. If it was a math problem, you can't fight negativity with more negativity. You can't fight hate with more hate. You can fight hate with love. You can fight negativity with positive energy. It doesn't mean you're always going to win. But if you keep trying to put more negativity on top of it, you're only going to spread that ripple effect throughout the world rather than the ripple effect you can have. And I think our goal should be to show up in a way that we leave the world in a more positive place than when we came. Like when we leave it, we should have left it in a more positive way. What do you want to instill in the world? What do you want the world to remember you for? It's a big statement, but it doesn't even have to be like the world as a whole. It could be your world.
Right.
How do you want the people around you to remember you? How do you want them to eulogize you? Well, man, Bob was great, but he could find something negative about every single thing he ever talked about. Or man, whenever I was down, Bob had that positive energy. He really made a difference in my life. Those are the types of conversations I want people to have about me. Not that I was making them feel less than, making them feel more negative and adding fuel to their negativity fire. You can be a change. You can make a difference, but you have to be intentional about those things. And in order to do that and show up in that way, you have to be intentional about what you're putting in front of your eyes on a daily basis and how it's impacting you, and then making changes from there and understanding that you control it ultimately. That's what I got.
I like it. I think that's good.
Yeah. So if there's a way we can lift you up, if there's something you're going to try, if you want to reach out to us, you can do that over at Growth Reframed. We love y'all. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Growth Reframed. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. We would love to connect with you, so shoot us a DM on Instagram at Growth Reframed. We love y'all.